Think about the last time you went to a grocery store. You walked in, picked up a package of meat, paid for it, and left. Zero planning. Zero risk. Maybe 15 minutes of your life. But for the vast majority of human history, getting that same piece of meat meant facing something that outweighed you by thousands of pounds, had weapons built into its face, and had absolutely no intention of becoming your dinner. So how did they do it? How did a species with no claws, no fangs, and a running speed that wouldn't impress a golden retriever become the most lethal hunting force this planet has ever seen? The answer isn't one method, it's a collection of strategies so creative, so ruthless, and so shockingly sophisticated that modern scientists are still uncovering new evidence of them today. Let's start with the most counterintuitive hunting method ever devised, the one where the weapon does absolutely nothing. For decades, archaeologists found razor-sharp Clovis stone points embedded in mammoth bones across North America, and assumed the obvious. Hunters threw these spears at the animals. Then, in 2024, researchers at UC Berkeley decided to actually test that assumption, and what they found turned everything upside down. Throwing a spear at a 6-ton mammoth generates nowhere near enough force to reach a vital organ. The physics simply don't work, so either ancient hunters were doing something wildly ineffective for thousands of years, or they were doing something completely different from what everyone assumed. They were planting the spear in the ground and stepping back. A 6-ton mammoth charging at even 15 miles per hour generates 67 times more force than the strongest human could produce with a throw. By angling the spear into the frozen earth and retreating to safety, hunters let the mammoth's own momentum drive the weapon straight into its body. The Clovis point's design made it even more devastating. Once the tip penetrated flesh, the engineered mounting system caused the point to behave like a modern hollow point bullet, expanding the wound catastrophically from the inside. The most dangerous animal on the steppe became its own executioner. The hunter never had to get close enough to be touched. Some ancient hunters did not rely on spears at all. Instead, they turned simple stones into deadly weapons. For smaller animals, hunters selected and carried ball-sized throwing stones, heavy enough to cause serious injury from 25 meters away. This was not random. Researchers studying stone objects found in the Cave of Hearths in South Africa discovered that prehistoric hunters were carefully selecting rocks of a very specific size and weight. Similarly, for larger animals trapped in narrow valleys, the same principle scaled up. A group of hunters would drive an animal into a narrow valley or canyon from which there was no easy escape. Other hunters, already positioned on the ledges above, would then push or drop the prepared stones down onto the trapped animal, and it could not escape what was falling from above. The high ground was not just safety, it was the whole plan. But before we go any further, tell us in the comments which country are you watching this from. Now let's get into it. Some hunters didn't want to be anywhere near the animal at all, so they built something instead. From the air, they look like enormous kites drawn across the desert floor. 2 long stone walls stretching hundreds of meters, gradually narrowing into a funnel. From the ground, standing at the wide end, you wouldn't even realize you were inside a trap. The walls were deliberately kept low, just high enough to make an animal uncomfortable, not high enough to look like an obvious barrier. Because the builders understood something most hunters never learn. You don't need to contain an animal to control it. You just need to make every other direction slightly more uncomfortable than the direction you want it to go. These structures are called desert kites, and in 2022, 3 separate peer-reviewed studies confirmed their purpose simultaneously. They were mega traps. The kites funneled gazelles and ibex down tapered paths which ended in massive pits or sudden cliff edges, with their placement demonstrating sophisticated knowledge of animal migration patterns and landscape. The most remarkable thing about desert kites isn't their size, it's their independence. Similar structures have been found in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Slovenia, and the Andes. Separate cultures on opposite sides of the planet with no contact with each other, arriving at the exact same solution. Not because they copied each other, because they were all equally smart and the problem had one optimal answer. Now here's where the methods become genuinely unsettling. Because the next strategy didn't use walls or spears at all. It used chemistry. In January 2026, a study published in Science Advances revealed that 60,000-year-old arrowheads from the Umhlatuzana rock shelter in South Africa still contained traces of a plant-based poison, pushing the use of poison arrows tens of thousands of years earlier than previously known. The poison came from a plant called gifbol, a bulbous flowering plant whose alkaloids attack the cardiovascular system. Hunters extracted it, prepared it without accidentally poisoning themselves, and applied it to arrowheads too small to kill on impact alone. That was entirely the point. Stone Age hunters needed to comprehend delayed causation, shooting an animal, watching it flee apparently unharmed, and then following it patiently for hours, knowing that at some point the poison would do its work. That is not instinct. That is chemistry, strategy, and tracking operating simultaneously inside a single human mind, 60,000 years before the invention of writing. The same poison from the same plant was still being used by traditional hunters in southern Africa in the 1700s. Identical preparation method, identical strategy. Preserved perfectly across 50,000 years of human memory, passed from parent to child across 2,000 generations without ever being written down. But of all the hunting strategies ancient humans developed, the one that most completely defies expectation is also the simplest. They just never stopped running. The human body is a biological disaster as a predator. No claws, embarrassing teeth, skin so thin a house cat can draw blood, no night vision, no ability to smell prey at a distance. Our top sprint speed wouldn't win a race against a chicken, but we can run at a moderate pace for an almost incomprehensible amount of time, and almost nothing else on Earth can say the same. We have up to 5 million sweat glands, more than any other species on the planet. While a wolf overheats after a sustained chase, and a cheetah must rest after 30 seconds of sprinting, the human body just keeps cooling itself and keeps moving. Our Achilles tendons function as biological springs. Our gluteus maximus, the largest muscle in the body, is designed specifically for sustained running, not walking. We breathe completely independently of our stride pattern, something four-legged animals physically cannot do. Anthropologists have directly observed this method, called persistence hunting, among the sand bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. Hunters pursue a kudu antelope through midday heat exceeding 37.8 degrees Celsius, covering 15 to 25 miles at a sustained pace. The kudu is faster in a sprint, but it cannot sweat efficiently through its fur. After 2 to 5 hours of pursuit, its core temperature rises to fatal levels. It collapses from hyperthermia, its own body heat killing it from the inside. The hunter walks up to an animal that can no longer stand and delivers a single killing blow. From the kudu's perspective, something is chasing it that simply never stops. No matter how far it runs, that strange upright figure is still coming, calmly, steadily, not even breathing hard. There is no evolutionary response to that. Nothing in nature prepared any animal for an enemy that cannot be outrun. And then humans took every one of these methods and multiplied them by adding the one thing no other predator had ever developed: language, planning, coordinated strategy across a group. At Schöningen in Germany, 8 perfectly engineered spears were found alongside the butchered remains of 50 horses. That number is not luck. It is a planned, multi-person operation requiring advanced knowledge of where the horses would gather, precise positioning of hunters, and coordinated execution without anyone breaking position at the wrong moment. Someone designed that hunt before it happened. Someone assigned roles. Someone communicated a plan. And between 15,000 and 35,000 years ago, humans made one final decision that no species had ever made in Earth's history. They looked at another apex predator and decided not to kill it, but to recruit it. Archaeological sites in Jordan dated to 11,500 years ago showed dramatic increases in small game remains showing evidence of canine digestion. Cave art from Saudi Arabia, dated between 8,000 and 9,000 years ago, shows dogs on leashes, wearing collars, assisting coordinated hunts. The human-dog partnership spread across the globe faster than any previous human innovation, because it made both species more effective than either could ever be alone. Go back to that grocery store. The packaged meat you picked up in 15 minutes with zero risk represents the end point of a 300,000-year chain of innovation. The planted spear that used physics instead of strength. The mega trap that used architecture instead of confrontation. The poison arrow that used chemistry instead of force. The coordinated group strategy that used language instead of individual capability. Each of these methods was developed by people working with nothing but observation, memory, and the accumulated knowledge of everyone who came before them. No laboratories, no universities, no written records, just minds sharp enough to look at an impossible problem and find a solution that the universe hadn't thought of yet. The craziest thing about these methods isn't how extreme they were, it's how intelligent they were. And yet here we are, every one of us alive today, the direct descendant of someone who figured it out.